Marcus Chen pressed his back against the cold concrete wall of the abandoned warehouse, pulling his thin jacket tighter around his 12-year-old frame. The December wind howled through the broken windows above, carrying the scent of snow and desperation. His stomach cramped with hunger, a familiar companion that had lived with him for the past 3 months since the foster system had failed him once again. The blue wool blanket beside him was his most precious possession. Mrs. Rodriguez from the soup kitchen had given it to him 2 weeks ago, saying every child deserved something soft in this hard world. It was the first gift anyone had given him in years, and he treasured it more than anything he had ever owned. Through the cracked window, Marcus could see the city lights twinkling like distant stars. Other kids his age were probably warm in their beds, worrying about homework or video games. Marcus worried about where his next meal would come from and whether he would freeze before morning. A strange sound interrupted his thoughts. It wasn't the usual noise of traffic or distant sirens. This was different, like metal scraping against metal, followed by what sounded like a muffled explosion. The warehouse shook slightly, and dust fell from the ceiling. Marcus crept toward the window, curious despite his fear. In the empty lot behind the warehouse, something glowed with an eerie blue light. Whatever it was hadn't been there an hour ago when he had scouted the area for food scraps. His street-smart instincts screamed at him to stay hidden, but something else, something deeper, pulled him toward the mysterious light. Maybe it was the same instinct that had kept him alive on the streets for months, or maybe it was simple human curiosity. Wrapping his blanket around his shoulders, Marcus slipped out through a gap in the warehouse's back wall. The cold air hit him like a physical blow, but he pressed forward. As he got closer, the blue light revealed itself to be coming from a twisted mass of metal that had definitely not been made on Earth. The craft, for lack of a better word, was about the size of a small car, but shaped nothing like any vehicle Marcus had ever seen. It seemed to pulse with organic curves and mechanical edges, as if someone had tried to merge a seashell with a computer. Steam rose from several cracks in its surface, and that blue light leaked from what might have been windows. A weak sound came from inside the wreckage. It was barely audible, but it sounded like someone in pain. Marcus's heart raced. Every survival instinct he had developed told him to run. Weird things falling from the sky meant trouble, and trouble meant danger he couldn't afford. But the sound came again, weaker this time, and he found himself moving closer instead of away. Through one of the cracks in the strange metal, he could see movement. Something was definitely alive in there. And it was hurt. "Hello?" Marcus called softly, feeling foolish for talking to what was obviously not human. "Are you okay in there?" The movement stopped. Then, to his amazement, a voice responded. It was unlike anything he had ever heard, like wind chimes mixed with the sound of water flowing over rocks. But somehow, impossibly, he understood it. "Help! Please!" Marcus looked around the empty lot. No one else was coming. No ambulances, no police, no adults who might know what to do. Just him, a homeless kid with nothing but the clothes on his back and a blanket. He approached the largest crack in the craft and peered inside. What he saw made him gasp. The being inside was humanoid, but clearly not human. It was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Its limbs were longer than they should be, and it had 4 arms instead of 2. Its face was angular and alien, with large eyes that held an intelligence Marcus recognized despite their foreign shape. But what struck him most was that the creature was obviously dying. A dark fluid that might have been blood pooled beneath it, and its breathing was labored and shallow. One of its 4 arms was bent at an impossible angle, and those large eyes were growing dim. "I'm Marcus," he said, not knowing why he was introducing himself to a dying alien. "What's your name?" The creature's eyes focused on him with what seemed like surprise. When it spoke again, its voice was barely a whisper. Zethkar. My name is Zethkar. Okay, Zethkar. I'm going to help you, but I don't know how. Can you move? The alien tried to shift position and made a sound of pain that needed no translation. No, internal damage. Too severe. I am dying. Marcus felt a strange tightness in his chest. He had seen death before on the streets. Old Henry, who froze to death behind the dumpster last winter. Sarah, who overdosed in the alley near the train station. Death was a constant presence in his world. But this felt different. This creature had fallen from the stars, and now it was dying alone in a junkyard, just like Marcus might someday. Are you cold? Marcus asked. Zethkar's head moved slightly, which might have been a nod. Temperature, dropping, systems, failing. Without hesitation, Marcus unwrapped his precious blanket from around his shoulders. The cold air immediately bit into him, but he ignored it. He began working the soft blue wool through the crack in the alien craft, spreading it as best he could over Zethkar's shivering form. There, Marcus said, his teeth already beginning to chatter. That should help a little. Zethkar's large eyes widened with what Marcus could only interpret as shock. You give your covering to me, but you are also cold, also vulnerable. Yeah. Well, Marcus shrugged, wrapping his thin arms around himself. You need it more than I do right now. But you are young, small. You need protection from cold. Marcus managed a weak smile. I've been cold before. I'll be okay. The truth was, he probably wouldn't be okay. Without the blanket, he might not survive the night if the temperature dropped much more. But looking at this dying creature from another world, Marcus couldn't bring himself to care about his own survival. Something about Zethkar's situation resonated with his own loneliness and abandonment. They sat in silence for a few minutes, alien and human boy, both outcasts in their own ways. Zethkar seemed to be studying Marcus with those enormous eyes. Why? The alien finally asked. Why what? Why do you help me? I am not your species. You do not know me. I can give you nothing in return. Marcus thought about that question. Why was he helping? He didn't really have an answer that made sense even to himself. I guess because someone should, he said finally. Everyone deserves to have someone care when they're dying. And maybe because I know what it's like to be alone. Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note that Marcus somehow recognized as profound sadness. My people, we do not help those who cannot help us in return. It is not efficient, not logical. That sounds lonely, Marcus said. Yes, Zethkar agreed. Very lonely. The alien's breathing was becoming more labored, and Marcus could see that his time was running out. Impulsively, he reached through the crack and gently touched one of Zethkar's hands. The skin was surprisingly warm and had a texture like smooth stone. I'm sorry you're dying alone, Marcus whispered. I am not alone, Zethkar replied, his voice growing fainter. You are here. You gave me warmth. You gave me kindness. I have not experienced such selflessness. Zethkar's breathing stopped for a moment, and Marcus thought he had died. But then the alien's eyes opened again, brighter than before, and he spoke with sudden urgency. Marcus, child of Earth, I must tell you something. Important. What is it? My people. They are coming. They will find my ship, and they will find you. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. Is that bad? I do not know, Zethkar admitted. They will want to understand what happened here. They will want to study the one who showed kindness to a dying stranger. Will they hurt me? I hope not. But Marcus, remember this. Your actions tonight. They matter. More than you know. Kindness. It is the rarest thing in the universe, and you have shown it to one who had never experienced it. Zethkar's voice faded to almost nothing. Thank you for the warmth. Thank you for caring. The light in the alien's eyes dimmed and then went out entirely. Marcus sat by the crashed ship for several minutes, still holding the creature's cooling hand, feeling strangely bereft. He had known Zethkar for less than an hour, but somehow the alien's death hit him harder than he expected. Finally, the cold became too much to ignore. Marcus gently pulled his blanket back through the crack in the ship. Zethkar no longer needed it, and Marcus wasn't ready to die yet, even if he wasn't sure why. As he wrapped the blanket around himself, something caught his eye. Where Zethkar had been lying, a small device was glowing with the same blue light as the ship. It was about the size of Marcus's palm and seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Without really thinking about it, Marcus reached in and picked up the device. It was warm to the touch and seemed to hum with energy. The moment his fingers closed around it, images flashed through his mind. Space, stars, vast ships moving between worlds, and creatures like Zethkar, but these ones looked cold and distant, nothing like the being he had just comforted. The device went dark in his hand, but Marcus could still feel a faint warmth emanating from it. He slipped it into his jacket pocket and began walking back toward the warehouse. As he settled back into his corner, wrapped in his blanket that now smelled faintly of something otherworldly, Marcus stared up at the stars through the broken window. Some 3 days had passed since Zethkar died in Marcus's arms, and the world had gone completely insane. The morning after the crash, military vehicles had swarmed the area around the warehouse. Marcus had watched from his hiding spot in the building's basement as soldiers in hazmat suits loaded the alien ship onto a massive truck and drove away. He had expected them to search for him, but somehow they missed his hiding place entirely. The news called it a weather balloon incident, but Marcus knew better. He had touched an alien hand and felt it grow cold. He had the device in his pocket to prove it had been real, though he hadn't dared to touch it again since that first night. What worried him most was that strange things had been happening to him since then. Small things at first. He found himself understanding bits of conversation in languages he had never heard before. Yesterday, when Mrs. Chen at the corner store was arguing with her supplier in rapid Mandarin, Marcus somehow knew she was complaining about late deliveries and rising prices. Then there was his improved night vision. The basement of the warehouse was pitch black, but Marcus could navigate it as if someone had installed dim lighting everywhere, and his hearing had become incredibly acute. He could hear the conversations of people 3 blocks away if he concentrated. The strangest thing, though, was the dreams. Every night since touching the device, Marcus dreamed of space. Not the romantic, adventurous space from movies, but the real thing. Vast emptiness, punctuated by burning stars and planets that defied imagination. And in these dreams, he wasn't alone. Voices spoke to him in languages his conscious mind couldn't understand, but his dreaming self comprehended perfectly. They were coming. Zethkar's people. And they were not happy. Marcus had learned enough from the dreams to understand that Zethkar had been what humans might call a scientist or explorer. He had been on a mission to study Earth from a distance, but something had gone wrong with his ship's stealth systems, causing him to crash. The fact that he had made contact with a human was not part of the plan. Now his people, who called themselves the Kethara, were sending a ship to investigate. They wanted to know what had happened to their scout, and why his ship's final transmission had contained strange energy readings unlike anything in their database. Marcus understood that those energy readings had something to do with the moment he had touched Zethkar's hand and accepted the device. Somehow, in that brief contact, something had been transferred between them. What exactly Marcus didn't know, but he was beginning to suspect it was more than just alien technology. On the fourth morning, Marcus woke to find the device glowing brightly in his jacket pocket. This time, when he touched it, instead of overwhelming visions, he heard a single, clear voice. "Child of Earth, we have arrived. Come to the place where our brother died. Come alone. Do not fear." The voice was similar to Zethkar's but colder, more formal. It carried an authority that made Marcus's spine straighten involuntarily. He almost didn't go. Every street instinct he had told him that walking into an obvious trap was the stupidest thing he could do, but something deeper than instinct compelled him forward. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the strange sense of connection he felt to Zethkar's people. Or maybe it was simply that he was tired of running and hiding and scraping by alone. Marcus made his way through the early morning streets toward the empty lot. The government cleanup crew had done a thorough job. There was no sign that anything unusual had happened there. But as Marcus approached the spot where Zethkar had died, the air began to shimmer like heat waves rising from summer pavement. The shimmer intensified and then suddenly cleared, revealing three figures that definitely weren't human. The Cathara looked similar to Zethkar, but different in ways that mattered. Where Zethkar had seemed gentle and curious despite his injuries, these three radiated power and cold intelligence. They were taller than Zethkar had been, nearly 8 feet in height, and their forearms moved with precise economical gestures. Their skin didn't shimmer like oil on water, but appeared more metallic, like living chrome. The one in the center stepped forward and spoke in that same formal voice Marcus had heard through the device. "I am Commander Veltar of the exploration vessel Star Whisper. You are the human who encountered our fallen scout." It wasn't a question, but Marcus nodded anyway. "Yes, sir." "I'm Marcus." "You will address me as Commander Veltar," the alien corrected coldly. "Zethkar transmitted data about your interaction before his death. This data contains impossibilities." "I don't understand." The second Cathara, whose metallic skin had a bluish tint, spoke up. "Our brother's final transmission indicated that you provided him with comfort during his death throes. This is impossible. Your species is known for violence and selfishness, particularly toward that which is different. Yet you gave him warmth and stayed with him until death claimed him." Marcus felt a flush of anger at the casual dismissal of humanity. "Maybe you don't know us as well as you think you do." The third Cathara, smaller than the others with skin that held golden undertones, made a sound that might have been surprise. Commander Veltar held up one of his 4 hands for silence. "Your species has been under observation for 73 of your years," Veltar continued. "In that time, we have documented endless conflicts, exploitation of the weak by the strong, and the systematic destruction of your own planetary environment. Yet you, a juvenile of your species with no resources and in obvious need, chose to sacrifice your only protection from the elements to comfort a dying stranger from another world." "It seemed like the right thing to do," Marcus said quietly. "The right thing," repeated the golden-skinned Cathara. "Commander, this concept appears repeatedly in human communications, but we have observed little evidence of it being practiced." Veltar ignored his subordinate and focused intently on Marcus. "Show us the device." Marcus hesitated. The device felt important, precious somehow. But the commander's tone suggested that refusal wasn't really an option. He pulled the small object from his pocket. All 3 Cathara stepped back simultaneously when they saw it. "Impossible," breathed the blue-skinned one. "A bonding device. But Zethkar carried no such technology." "What's a bonding device?" Marcus asked. Commander Veltar's expression, alien though it was, clearly showed shock. "A bonding device creates a permanent psychic link between 2 beings. It is ancient technology, forbidden for over 1,000 of your years. The few that still exist are considered sacred relics. But I found this in Zethkar's ship after he died. You did not find it, the golden Cathara said softly. It was created. In the moment of our brother's death, when you showed him unprecedented kindness, when you gave him comfort and warmth and companionship in his final moments, something remarkable happened. Your emotional resonance was so powerful, so pure, that it triggered a spontaneous psychic bonding. The device manifested as a result of that connection. Marcus stared at the small object in his hand. Are you saying this thing exists because I was nice to Zethkar? More than nice, Commander Veltar said, and for the first time his voice carried something other than cold authority. You displayed what your species calls compassion. True compassion, without expectation of reward or benefit. In 9,000 years of galactic civilization, we have encountered fewer than a dozen beings capable of such selfless emotional connection. But I'm just a kid, Marcus protested. I'm nobody special, I'm homeless. I don't even have a family. The blue-skinned Cathara stepped closer. Perhaps that is exactly why you are special. You have nothing, yet you gave freely. You are abandoned by your own kind, yet you showed kindness to one who was not even of your species. Commander Veltar began pacing, which looked strange given his four-armed anatomy. This creates a significant problem. The bonding device contains not only a connection to our deceased brother, but also access to advanced Cathara knowledge and technology. By rights, you now possess information that your species is not ready for. I don't want it, Marcus said quickly. You can have it back. It does not work that way, the golden Cathara explained. The bonding is permanent. The device will only function for you, and attempting to remove it forcibly would likely result in your death. So, what happens now? Marcus asked. The three Cathara exchanged rapid communication in a series of musical tones and chiming sounds. Marcus was surprised to discover that he could understand parts of it. They were debating what to do with him. Commander Veltar wanted to follow protocol and remove Marcus from Earth permanently, taking him to a Cathara research facility where he could be studied safely. The blue-skinned one, whose name Marcus somehow knew was Science Officer Nithal, argued that such an action would be a violation of their own laws regarding primitive civilizations. The golden one, Navigator Shim-Tar, proposed a third option that Marcus couldn't quite grasp. Finally, Commander Veltar turned back to Marcus. We have three options. First, we take you from this world and you live among the Cathara as a subject of scientific study. Second, we use our technology to sever the bonding, which will almost certainly kill you but protect our secrets. Third, he paused, looking at his subordinates. Third, Marcus prompted. Navigator Shim-Tar stepped forward. Third, we test whether your display of compassion was genuine or merely an aberration. If you are truly capable of the emotional depth that created this bonding, then you represent something unprecedented in our experience with your species. Something that might change how we view humanity entirely. How would you test that? By presenting you with choices, Science Officer Nithal explained. Situations where you must decide between personal benefit and the welfare of others. Your species typically chooses personal benefit. If you consistently choose otherwise, it would suggest that humans may be capable of growth beyond our current understanding. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. And if I fail your tests? Then we will know that your kindness to Zethkar was simply an anomaly, Commander Veltar said, and we will proceed with option 2. The casual way he mentioned Marcus's probable death made the boy's stomach clench with fear, but beneath the fear was something else, anger. You know what? Marcus said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. I don't care about your tests. I'm not going to jump through hoops to prove I'm worthy of staying alive. I helped Zethkar because he was dying and scared and alone, not because I wanted to impress anyone. If that's not good enough for you, then do whatever you think you have to do." The three Cathara went very still. Marcus realized he might have just signed his own death warrant, but he was too angry to care. Commander Veltar studied him for a long moment. Fascinating. Even facing death, you refuse to compromise your principles for personal gain. Most humans would beg, bargain, or attempt deception in such circumstances. "Maybe you've been watching the wrong humans," Marcus replied. Science Officer Nithal made that sound of surprise again. "Commander, I believe we have our answer." "What answer?" "The test has already been administered," Navigator Shimtar explained. "And you have passed. You were offered a choice between maintaining your integrity and potentially saving your life. You chose integrity without hesitation." Marcus blinked in confusion. "That was the test?" "One of them," Commander Veltar confirmed. "There will be others. But your response indicates that your compassion for Zethkar was not an anomaly. It appears to be a fundamental aspect of your character." "So you're not going to kill me?" "Not today," Veltar said, and Marcus thought he detected something that might have been humor in the alien's voice. "But your situation remains complex. You now carry Cathara knowledge in a human mind. This has never happened before. We do not know what the consequences might be, for you or for your species." "What kind of consequences?" Science Officer Nithal consulted a device that appeared in her hand. "The bonding is still stabilizing. You may experience enhanced cognitive abilities, improved physical capabilities, or expanded sensory perception. You may also begin to understand concepts that are beyond typical human comprehension." "Is that bad?" "We do not know," Navigator Shimtar admitted, "but we intend to find out." Commander Veltar stepped closer to Marcus. Weakened 6 months had passed since Marcus became humanity's first unofficial alien ambassador, and his life had transformed in ways he could never have imagined. The Cathara had provided him with a small but comfortable apartment in downtown Seattle, along with a cover story that he was part of an experimental education program for gifted children. To the outside world, Marcus Chen had gone from homeless street kid to promising student seemingly overnight. Only he knew the truth about the alien technology that had enhanced his learning abilities and the nightly communications with the orbiting Cathara ship. Marcus sat at his desk, working through advanced quantum physics equations that would have baffled college professors while simultaneously monitoring news feeds from around the world. The Cathara had asked him to watch for signs of humanity's readiness for first contact, and what he saw both encouraged and worried him. The enhanced cognitive abilities granted by his bonding with Zethkar allowed him to process vast amounts of information quickly. He could see patterns in global events that others missed, understanding the complex web of politics, economics, and social movements that shaped human civilization. On the positive side, he had documented remarkable acts of human kindness and cooperation, communities coming together to help disaster victims, scientists sharing research to combat diseases, young people organizing to protect the environment. There was compassion in humanity, just as he had shown to Zethkar. But there was also darkness. Wars continued to rage across multiple continents. Wealthy nations turned away desperate refugees. Corporate interests prioritized profit over environmental protection. The same species capable of incredible kindness was also capable of breathtaking cruelty. His evening communication with Commander Veltar was about to begin. Marcus activated the small holographic projector the Cathara had provided, and the familiar form of the alien commander materialized in his living room. "Good evening, Marcus. What observations do you have for us today?" "Mixed news, Commander. Humanity continues to confuse me." "Explain." Marcus pulled up several news articles on his tablet. This morning, a village in Bangladesh was hit by severe flooding. Within hours, people from dozens of countries had donated money, supplies, and expertise to help with rescue efforts. The response was incredible. And yet, at the same time, a refugee ship with 300 people aboard was turned away from European ports and is still floating in international waters. People are dying, and nobody wants to take responsibility for helping them. Commander Veltar's expression, which Marcus had learned to read over the months, showed contemplation. Your species appears to exhibit selective compassion, kindness toward some, indifference toward others. It's not that simple, Marcus protested. The people donating to flood relief aren't the same ones making immigration policy. Humanity isn't one unified entity making coordinated decisions. We're billions of individuals, each making choices based on our own understanding and circumstances. This individuality may be both your greatest strength and your fatal weakness, observed Science Officer Nithal, whose image appeared beside the commander's. It allows for remarkable innovation and diversity of thought, but prevents unified action on critical issues. Marcus had had this conversation many times over the past months. The Cathara struggled to understand human nature because their own society was far more collective. Individual Cathara had less autonomy but also less conflict than humans experienced. There's something else, Marcus said. I've been monitoring social media and news comment sections. There are increasing reports of people having unusual dreams about space, about alien contact. Nothing specific enough to cause alarm, but the frequency is increasing. Commander Veltar exchanged a look with Nithal that Marcus had learned meant concern. The psychic resonance from your bonding may be expanding beyond our expectations. This is troubling. Why? Is it dangerous? Not dangerous, but significant. Your connection to Cathara consciousness through Zethkar may be creating subtle psychic echoes in other humans. If this continues, it could prepare your species for contact, or it could create fear and unrest. Navigator Shimtar's image joined the conversation. Marcus, we must accelerate our timeline. The Galactic Council has been monitoring our mission, and there are growing concerns about extended contact with a primitive species. Primitive? Marcus felt the familiar flash of anger at that word. We might not have faster-than-light travel yet, but that doesn't make us primitive. Perhaps primitive is the wrong word, Shimtar conceded. Underdeveloped in certain areas. Your technology is impressive for a species that has not yet achieved interstellar travel. Your arts and culture show remarkable creativity, but your social development lags significantly behind your other achievements. This was another frequent topic of discussion. The Cathara evaluated species based on their ability to overcome internal conflicts and work together for mutual benefit. By their standards, humanity was essentially a collection of warring tribes that happened to have nuclear weapons. What does accelerating the timeline mean? Marcus asked. We must make a decision within the next month about whether to recommend humanity for inclusion in the galactic community or to maintain the quarantine until your species matures further. Marcus felt his stomach clench. In the months he had spent learning about galactic civilization, he had come to understand what quarantine meant. Humanity would be isolated, prevented from expanding beyond Earth, monitored but not contacted until they either evolved socially or destroyed themselves. Given humanity's track record, the Cathara estimated it could take centuries for social maturation, if it happened at all. What can I do to help humanity's case? Commander Veltar was quiet for a moment. Tomorrow we will conduct a final evaluation. You will be presented with a choice that will test not only your personal character, but your understanding of your species. Your decision will significantly influence our recommendation to the Galactic Council. What kind of choice? You will understand tomorrow. But Marcus, there is something you must know. The bonding with Zethkar has changed you in ways beyond enhanced cognitive abilities. You are becoming something new, a bridge between human and Cathara consciousness. If you choose to accept what you are becoming, you could serve as a permanent liaison between our species. And if I don't, then the bonding can be safely severed now that it has stabilized. You would return to being fully human, with no memory of our contact, and live out a normal human life. Marcus felt a chill of fear and excitement. You're asking me to choose between being human and being something else. We are asking you to choose what kind of future you want for both yourself and your species, Shimtar explained. But know this, the choice must be freely made. Any coercion would invalidate the test and result in humanity's quarantine. The holographic projections faded, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He walked to his window and looked up at the night sky, knowing that somewhere above the clouds, a ship full of aliens was waiting for him to make the most important decision in human history. The next morning, Marcus was transported via Cathara technology to a neutral location, a small island in the Pacific that appeared uninhabited but was actually a sophisticated testing facility. Commander Veltar and his team were waiting, along with several other Cathara that Marcus hadn't met before. Marcus, Veltar began formally, we present you with the final evaluation. You have learned much about both human and Cathara civilization over these months. You understand the benefits that galactic citizenship would bring to your species. Advanced technology, medical knowledge, environmental restoration techniques, and protection from cosmic threats. Marcus nodded. He had indeed learned about the wonders of galactic civilization. Diseases that could be cured instantly, technology that could clean polluted environments within years, energy sources that could power human civilization for millennia without environmental damage. You also understand the concerns, Nithal continued. Humanity's tendency toward conflict, resource hoarding, and environmental destruction. Your species' history of using new technologies for warfare rather than peaceful advancement. Yes, I understand both sides. Shimtar gestured, and a large holographic display appeared, showing Earth from space. Here is your choice. We can offer humanity immediate access to galactic technology and citizenship. Your species would advance rapidly, solving most of your current problems within decades. The display showed images of Earth transformed. Clean oceans, flourishing forests, cities powered by clean energy, space elevators reaching toward the stars. However, Veltar continued, this rapid advancement would fundamentally change human nature. You would become more like us, rational, peaceful, cooperative, but also less individual, less creative, less human. The passionate, chaotic energy that defines your species would be lost. The display shifted to show the alternative, Earth as it was now, with all its problems and conflicts, but also its incredible diversity and creative energy. The alternative is quarantine, until your species matures naturally. This would take centuries, possibly millennia. Many humans would suffer and die from problems that we could easily solve. Your species might not survive long enough to achieve social maturation, but if you did survive, you would do so as authentically human. Marcus stared at the two possible futures. You're asking me to choose between saving humanity and preserving humanity. Precisely. And there is a third element to this choice. If you accept full bonding with Cathara consciousness, you could serve as a bridge between our species during the natural maturation process. You would help guide humanity's development while preserving what makes you uniquely human. But you would sacrifice your own humanity to do so. Marcus felt the weight of the decision crushing down on him. The fate of his entire species rested on a choice he had to make. He thought about Zethkar, dying alone in that crashed ship until a homeless boy decided to share his blanket. He thought about Mrs. Rodriguez giving him that blanket in the first place, saying every child deserved something soft in a hard world. He thought about all the acts of kindness he had witnessed over the months, and all the cruelty as well. "Can I ask you something, Commander?" "Of course." What did Zethkar think about humanity? In his final report before he died, what was his assessment? Veltar hesitated. His report was unusual. He believed that humanity possessed something rare in the galaxy, the ability to choose kindness even when it served no logical purpose. He theorized that this trait, properly nurtured, could make your species valuable allies rather than dangerous primitives. "And you disagree?" "I am uncertain. Your species is capable of both remarkable compassion and terrible cruelty. But then, so are most species at your stage of development." Marcus walked to the edge of the platform and looked out at the ocean. Somewhere beyond the horizon was the rest of humanity, going about their daily lives, unaware that their future hung in the balance. "I've made my decision," he said finally. "Speak your choice," Commander Veltar said formally. Marcus turned to face the assembled Cathara. "I choose the natural path for humanity. No forced advancement. We need to earn our place in the galaxy by growing into it ourselves." Several of the Cathara looked surprised. Nithal stepped forward. "Even knowing that millions will suffer who could be saved, even knowing that your species might not survive the transition?" "Yes, because anything else wouldn't really be saving humanity. It would be replacing us with something that looks like us but isn't us." "And your personal choice?" Shimtar asked. "Will you accept full bonding to serve as a guide for your species?" Marcus closed his eyes and felt the device pulse warm against his chest. In his mind, he could sense Zethkar's presence, gentle and encouraging. "Yes, I'll accept the bonding. Someone needs to help my people find their way, and it might as well be the homeless kid who learned about kindness from an alien." Commander Veltar stepped forward and placed one of his 4 hands on Marcus's shoulder. "Then let it be recorded that humanity has passed the final test, not through the choice of their representative, but through the character that shaped that choice. A species that produces individuals willing to sacrifice themselves for others, even when those others include potential enemies, is a species capable of growth." The bonding process was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Knowledge flowed through him, not just facts and technology, but understanding of concepts that human language had no words for. He felt his consciousness expand to encompass perspectives from across the galaxy while somehow remaining fundamentally himself. When it was over, Marcus was no longer entirely human, but he was still Marcus. He could feel the love and fear and hope of every person on Earth, and he could also sense the vast network of galactic civilization waiting to welcome humanity when they were ready. "How long do you think it will take?" Marcus asked Commander Veltar as the Cathara prepared to depart for their home world. "Perhaps 2 centuries, perhaps 5. Your species is unpredictable, but they will have guidance now, subtle influences toward cooperation and understanding, and when they are ready, the galaxy will be waiting." The Cathara ships disappeared into the stars, leaving Marcus alone on the island, but not really alone. He could feel the presence of every human on Earth and the potential that burned bright in each one. A rescue helicopter approached, sent to pick up the stranded student. As Marcus prepared to return to his human life, he smiled. He had work to do, an entire species to help guide toward their destiny among the stars. And it all started because a homeless boy decided to give his blanket to a dying stranger. The device over his heart pulsed once, warmly, and Marcus thought he heard an echo of Zethkar's voice. "Thank you for the warmth." Marcus whispered back to the memory, "Thank you for showing me that kindness matters." Then he climbed into the helicopter and began his real journey as humanity's guardian angel. hidden among them but always watching, always hoping, always believing that his species would one day take their place among the stars as themselves, not as something they had been forced to become. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen was not alone. And neither was humanity. Not take you from your world without violating galactic law, but we also cannot leave you unsupervised with access to our technology. Therefore, we propose a compromise. What kind of compromise? We will remain in orbit around your planet for one of your years. During that time, we will observe your development and provide guidance as needed. In return, you will serve as our unofficial ambassador to humanity. You will learn about both our species and yours, and help us determine whether first contact between our peoples is advisable. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the enormity of what was being offered. You want me to be like an alien ambassador? But I'm just a kid. I'm nobody important. That, said Commander Veltar, may be exactly why you are perfect for this role. The device in Marcus's hand pulsed once, warmly, as if agreeing. Where up there, Zethkar's people were coming. And they would want to meet the human boy who had shown kindness to one of their own. Marcus didn't know if that was a good thing or a terrible thing. But for the first time in months, he felt like his life might be about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. The device in his pocket pulsed once, gently, as if responding to his thoughts. Then it was still. In the distance, sirens began to wail,